Welcome to the Lunar and Planetary Institute's Professional Development Seminar Series. Thank you all for joining us. This is a new series of online programs that will feature seminars and workshops that offer guidance on personal and career development for the planetary science community. My name is Grace Bodwin, and I'm a Senior Science Engagement Specialist at the LPI, and it's my pleasure to host today's seminar. The session will be recorded and it will be posted on LPI's website and YouTube page after today. So all programs in this professional development seminar series are free and open to all. And as we build out this program, your feedback is really critical. So there will be a short survey after you leave this Zoom session. And if you have a moment, please share your input by completing that survey. That would mean a lot to us. If you have any questions during today's seminar about the program, you can type them into the chat or you can send me an email. And I'd love to chat with you about any input or questions you have. Today, I am very excited to welcome Doctors Sarah Hokanson and Béné Gnangnon, who will share their expertise and about evidence-based mentoring practices. So please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to our wonderful speakers. Thank you guys for being here. And with that, I will pass it off to you, Sarah and Béné. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. Thanks for having us virtually today. Does this mean that I'm like honorarily in the Space Force now? Because that would make me so much cooler to my 11-year-old twins. So
maybe we can get you an honorary badge.
Awesome. That sounds great. So we are delighted to be here. As Grace said, I'm Sarah. And I'm joined by my very lovely colleague, Béné, who will introduce herself in a moment. And we're talking today about building on effective mentoring relationships. So likely I saw a variety of career stages that are here in the workshop today. And but in every stage, mentoring is really at the heart of research and at the heart of collaborative science. So we're excited to tell you about that, as well as our Postdoc Academy project. And if we could go to the next slide. So we hope that by the end of the hour, or 55 minutes, you'll be able to do a few things. So the first is really reflecting on what productive mentoring conversations look like for you. So we'll provide you some frameworks from the literature and from our own work, but hopefully you will be able to come up with a definition of what success might mean for you going forward. We're also going to focus specifically today on initiating and leading mentoring conversations specific to of balancing productivity with integrating work and life together. And we hope that with your fellow attendees, you'll be able to create a plan where you could actually follow up and discuss some of these things with whoever is within your context in a mentoring role.
Nice. Thank you so much, Sarah, for getting us started. So hi, everyone. My name is Béné. I'm currently a postdoc working with Sarah. And I came into this administrative postdoc in postdoc affairs after doing a first postdoc in STEM. And I was working between a wet lab and a dry lab. So today we're going to talk about mentorship. And I would like to start by sharing a definition for mentorship that was published by the NASEM, so the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. And I really like this definition because I think it challenges the definition we generally have about mentoring. So they published a book on the science of effective mentorship in STEM in 2019. And in it, they define mentorship as a professional working alliance where the two relational partners support one another's personal and professional growth by providing one another with career and psychosocial support. So it's a very rich definition, but I think the key word here is alliance, right? The idea that mentorship is a two-way street, that both the mentee and the mentor can both give to and take from one another for personal growth and professional growth purposes. And so if we keep in mind that mentorship is an alliance, then that means that we have to think about the way communication takes place between mentees and mentors. And when it comes to mentoring conversations, if we want them to mirror the mentoring alliance between mentors and mentees, then conversations have to be collaborative, right? They have to allow both people to share ideas, to ask questions, and to work collaboratively towards a solution. And actually, there's a lot of work that has been done by scholars in STEM and outside of STEM on mentoring conversations. And some of them, like Beronda Montgomery, for example, highlight the importance of the mentor and the mentee really intentionally taking the time and making the time to get to know one another deeply. She even says, learn one another. And other scholars, especially in education, have studied the communication styles mentors and mentees adopt in conversations with one another. And I'm highlighting this study from 2008 because I think it is quite an interesting one. They focus on the communication styles mentors adopt in conversations with their mentees when it comes to helping new teachers talk about their experience in a classroom and then become independent teachers. And so here they created this graph where they focus on how active the mentor is at initiating the conversation. This is the Y or vertical axis here. And they also look into how directive the mentor is. So how much does the mentor provide direction and a sense of guidance and a clear sense of what the next steps should look like following the conversation. And so they came up with these 4 different names for 4 different communication styles. And so mentors who are initiators come to the conversation very actively. They're the ones highlighting the topics that need to be discussed. They're the ones initiating the conversation, but they're non-directive, meaning that they let the mentee make decisions about where they should go next and what they should do next. Imperators are very active in initiating the conversation and very directive as well with the next steps that should be taken. And so in this study, they highlight that the most effective style is when mentors are encouragers. And so that means that, first of all, they're reactive. So they let the mentee come to the table with key topics that they want to discuss, with ideas. And also they're non-directive, meaning that they let the mentees really come up with ideas that can solve problems that they discuss together. And so they kind of adopt a coaching model when it comes to talking about issues and letting the mentee come up with solutions. And so that's kind of an interesting study, because if mentors have to be encouragers, if they have to be reactive to what the mentees said, and if they have to be coaches, then that means that mentees have to be very proactive. They have to come to the table prepared with key topics that they want to discuss, with problems they want to solve together, and also with ideas that they want to pursue as a result of the conversation. So I hope that this helps kind of challenge a bit the definition you might have of mentoring. But this is what the literature says, right? So we would like to invite you to also share from your own experience. What do you think makes mentoring conversations productive? And we would love to see if your experience has been similar to what we've been talking so far from the literature or not. So if you could put your ideas in the chat about what in your experience makes mentoring conversations productive, and we'll see what you come up with. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I see. So narrowing goals or visions, being very specific with the end result desired. Having a shared understanding of what the goal of the relationship is, helping me as a person rather than just a producer of knowledge. Okay, so that's great. I'm glad to see that this is very much aligned with what we've talked about so far. Clear guidance, expectations, setting up a framework for me to be more proactive, mutual respect, commitment to the relationship. Yeah, so there are multiple values that come out of this, right? There's the idea of reciprocity, mutual respect, commitment to one another, clarity around expectations. Yes. Yeah, and this is great because we're going to talk a lot about expectations today. Nice. So before we move on to the part about conversations themselves, I'm going to give the floor back to Sarah to talk a bit about the Postdoc Academy project.
Yeah, so I'm delighted to tell you a little bit about us. So we are funded by the National Institutes of Health and actually in our no-cost extension year. So this was a grant-funded program. And at our core, we were looking to create professional development and community for postdocs nationwide. So when I started my position at Boston University in 2015, a lot of postdocs told us how difficult it was to fit in professional development, and they wanted something that was more on demand. And so we created a blended learning program that is built on 2 massive open online courses, some of the content in which you're seeing today, and then optional learning communities where postdocs could gather and meet together to discuss the content in more detail. We called those learning sessions. And right place, right time. Maybe the only positive thing to come out of COVID was creating online education at a time when everyone was unable to come in person. And so it was not our intent to launch during a global pandemic, but that was the timing of our project. And so since 2020, we've offered our first course, which is focused on succeeding as a postdoc 6 times, and our second course, which we actually built and filmed during the pandemic 3 times, which is more focused on taking that next career step. And we're pleased that a lot of people have completed the course much higher than a typical MOOC. And we've seen a lot of postdocs both inside the course, so more than 10,000 across the country and the globe registered, as well as in our learning community discussions. And we're also conducting social science research on our participants so that we can better understand the postdoc experience to design future programs that address their needs. And some of the content that you're seeing today is really a direct result of that research, where we studied specifically our first course that was focused on succeeding as a postdoc. And so the good news was that we found largely that the course achieved what we wanted to. But what was really interesting was that the postdocs were really drawn to professional development because they were uncomfortable or unwilling to have conversations with their mentors about many of the subjects that were covered in the course. And so it inspired our project to be more intentional about how to create opportunities for those mentoring conversations to happen.
Great. And this is where, actually, this is how I come into the Postdoc Academy project. So Sarah hired me to help create those toolkits to support mentoring conversations between postdocs and mentors. And the way we built those toolkits is as follows. So basically, there are 10 modules in total in the 2 courses Sarah talked about. And so we wanted to create one toolkit for each module that would help postdocs take the topics covered in the course and take it to conversations with their mentors. Now, those resources have been built there on our website, and we'll share the website in the chat later. And there are standalone resources too, so you do not have to take the course to be able to access those resources and use them. So each of those toolkits focus on 10 topics, and I'll give you the list on the next slide. And they've been built with busy people in mind. So in each toolkit, there's one activity for the postdoc and a mirroring activity for the mentor. And the idea is that each activity can be done within 15 minutes or so. So this way you can go through the content, really reflect on the conversation you want to have, and then come prepared and have the actual conversation. So in each activity, there is one introduction video. The first one focuses on the literature, it's evidence-based, and it really introduces a topic of interest. Then it's followed by another video, which is quite short and that compiles a lot of interviews from fellow postdocs. And the idea here is to show postdocs how they can have conversations on the topic that we've mentioned, how it helped them in their career, how it helped them personally as well. And then we end the activity with discussion prompts to actually help the postdoc come to the table prepared with ideas of topics they can mention. And we also give them a handout that is there to help set goals for the conversation. It also contains some key questions to reflect on who you want to have the conversation with, what you want to leave the conversation with, and why you want to have this conversation. And the idea here is to support you to be as proactive as you can in the conversation. On the mentor side of things, the toolkit is built very similarly with an evidence-based introduction video, a video with interviews of fellow mentors who share about their mentoring practices, how they have conversations with mentees, and some of them even share about tools they use to have productive conversations with their mentees. And then, because we want to help the mentor adopt an encourager posture, we provide self-reflection prompts to help the faculty members think about the specific situation of the mentee they're about to have a conversation with, and to try and reflect about the topics they might bring to the table and how they could support them. So this is the idea behind the Productive Postdoc Conversation Toolkits. And here I'm presenting the 10 topics covered in this toolkits. We group them in 4 categories to make them easier to present. But basically, 3 of them can be extremely helpful when onboarding new mentees. And some of them are going to be helpful as well during the annual review process, right? So setting and revising expectations, building and using a career plan, defining and revisiting the definition of productivity and work-life integration. There are a couple of toolkits that are helpful to talk more about identity, power, privilege. Another one that is going to be helpful to talk about the way you like communicating, especially when it comes to giving and receiving feedback. We have 3 toolkits focused more on professional skills, like leadership, time management, and we also want to encourage broader conversations on transferable skills. And finally, we have 2 toolkits that support conversations on analyzing and expanding the mentee's network and also managing career transitions. And this last one actually includes closing a postdoc, handing over some ongoing projects, and also talking about how the mentor-mentee relationship is going to maybe evolve after the postdoc leaves the team. So I hope that that gives you a good overview of the support we provide through those toolkits. And so what we want to do today is kind of zoom in on the specific toolkit we have on talking about productivity and work-life integration. And we made that choice because we know it's a topic that is very important for many people in academia. And so we want to make sure that we can show you how you can use the toolkits and apply what we talk about today to your specific context. So what we're going to do in the second part of the workshop is go through some of the literature on work-life integration in academia. And then Sarah will take you through self-reflection activities and planning activities to actually plan a conversation on work-life integration. So what I'm showing here is a collection of studies that have been either conducted or opinion pieces that have been written by academics who share about the struggles they come across when it comes to finding a good sense of work-life integration or work-life balance. And here I focused mostly on studies about postdocs or professors, but similar struggles are encountered by PhD students as well. And there are different reasons to people having a sense of work-life unbalance that can include working very long hours, for example. This is something this professor has been sharing in this piece. The long working hours, also the number of responsibilities he has to juggle between doing research and teaching and mentoring and reviewing papers and reviewing grants. And so he really explains how that took a toll on his mental health and on the time he could devote to doing other things, like spending time with his family, for example. And so this study is a bit qualitative, so to speak, right? It's about the story of one person. But these 2 studies here are a bit more quantitative, and I want to zoom in on one of them that focuses specifically on postdocs. So in 2020, Nature published a study about postdocs, and to be able to write it, they surveyed postdocs around the world. And about 7,600 postdocs from 93 countries answered and shared about their sense of work-life balance. In the study, about 60% of respondents said that they were not satisfied with their work-life balance. And about 97%, which is almost all of the respondents, said that they actually spend time working on weekends and on days off. And this might be surprising to you or maybe unsurprising. This was definitely not surprising to me when I was working during my previous postdoc. And it's kind of It's kind of sad, and I think this is one of the reasons why in this workshop we want to show you and help you think about all the different factors that can have an impact on how you work and how much time you work as well. About 40% of respondents said that they worked more than 40 hours a week. And so all these numbers about the time spent at work really highlight how this has an impact on the ability of postdocs to then refresh and rest and recuperate, and how then it impacts their ability to come back to the lab with, a well-functioning brain that can come up with creative ideas and that can really manage all the work they have to do well. And so on the flip side of that, then 50%, about 50% of respondents said that they wanted professional help for work-related depression or anxiety, and about the same proportion said that they had already considered leaving academia altogether because of mental health issues. So what we want to do today is talk a bit about coping, right? We want this workshop to help you cope. But one key takeaway we would like you to keep in mind is that you cannot just cope on your own. Individual coping is characterized by, the fact that you believe in yourself, that you have a need to achieve, to grow, that you're willing to take risks, that you're able to adapt to changing circumstances. But the environment in which you are is going to support that coping or not. And so you can cope as an individual if you're in an environment that really encourages and celebrates individual contributions from a diverse set of individuals. If you're in an environment that supports and even encourages open communication, especially around expectations, if you're in a place that supports opportunity for growth and that is open to you taking risks, which means that it's an environment that's also open to you failing and making mistakes and trying again, right? And it's not really common in academia. There are a few people who share what they call the CV of failures to highlight all the hidden part of the iceberg, right? We tend to see the tip of the iceberg, right? The publications, the grants that were gotten, the awards, but we don't get to see all of the different difficulties that people have been through to be able to get there. And not everyone is open to sharing about those mistakes or failures. And then finally, you have to be in an environment that promotes healthy and safe working to be able to cope at the individual level. And what I would like to end this literature part on is with this study that was, again, conducted with a survey of postdocs. They collected data from about 190 postdocs from North America, and they asked them about their life satisfaction and about a bunch of other factors that could have an impact on this life satisfaction. And I'm highlighting here one table from the paper that shows a high correlation between the level of life satisfaction postdocs had and the atmosphere in the lab. And so atmosphere in the lab in this case was characterized by the lab culture, the frequency of interactions with their PI, and the quality of the interactions with other people in the lab. So I hope this further helps you realize that to be able to cope at the individual level, you also need to be in an environment that supports that coping, and that there are multiple factors around you that pertain to the culture, to the interactions you have with others, to maybe said and unsaid expectations that can have an impact on how you define productivity and how you decide to spend time in the lab or outside of the lab. And so before we move on to the more applied part of the workshop, where Sarah is going to take you through different activities to reflect on how you define work-life integration and how you would like to have conversations on this topic, I would like to show this video where you will see two postdocs share about how they define productivity, how that definition changed over time, and what they're doing and what overall supports their productivity. I'm hoping that I can, let's see, share my sound as well. There you go. Let me know if this doesn't work.
I've been defining productivity as the number of new diagrams and plots and slides that I can show. I've been defining productivity as the number of new diagrams and plots and slides that I can show every week. But that hasn't been a very healthy productivity measure, because some weeks you get, from 10 hours of work, you can get a lot of new, nice looking results. But another week, 20 hours might result in nothing that's visibly new. And that uneven process of hours spent and results gained makes me want to recalibrate a little bit and have, like, if I put in the hours, then I should be proud of that, feeling that that is a productive day. And it's something you get used to, that some days a lot of hours mean just banging your head against the same problem and not solving it. And some days it just flows and everything goes smoothly and you get, a lot more done. And I'm starting to get okay with that uneven, like measurable productivity output. I work on a few different projects, so sometimes when one is in a slow state, I can go in and do some work on a different project, and sometimes just having those conversations with the other people in the group, it's not like they don't know that that's how it is too. So saying that, yeah, I've been trying to solve this, I've ran into these problems, and that's why I don't have any new results. And repeatedly getting the okay from such a report slowly tears down that little barrier of feeling like, oh no, I should have done much more. Yeah, it's very important that I can feel comfortable with my colleagues to say that production I don't have many new results, and it's because of these issues. One thing we've been organizing in our division is to start a more informal talk series where we present results that are not yet ready. And I think that has been a nice platform where people come and show that in-progress research and open it up for discussion. And we've made it so that it's only early career scientists, which makes it a bit of a lower pressure situation to come and show the results that you don't know if they're right and you don't know how to proceed maybe. And that can make it feel productive even when it's not done, because people are interested and you talk about it, and often you get new ideas doing that.
Definitely. So I love an inclusive and supportive environment. I'm most productive where I know that I'm not on an isolated island working on something. I like very much a communal approach to whatever I'm given. But I also don't like to be micromanaged, which I do like that my mentor that I have right now, she very much understands that I can give you something and you have the critical thinking skills to figure it out. But if I need to, I can reach out to her and not feel that what I'm saying is not taken for an account, or I feel bad about it, that she's very much welcoming and open arms and approachable. So that's one big part of it. But also I just think that my culture institution is very big on diversity. So I came from two smaller HBCU institutions for my undergraduate and graduate scenarios. So when I got to my postdoc, Emory's a big school. It's very big. I didn't know anybody. I was brand new during COVID at the time I started. So it was just a little scary to adapt to that. But then once I got there, and like I said, my institution promotes, hey, you can reach out and have friends outside of that too. That helps me be productive as well, because I'm not taking my job as just a job. I kind of now enjoy what I'm doing. So I'm very extrovert. I don't know if you could tell my personality, I'm very much, this is who I am and going to get that. And I think that helps me personally in the beginning, as before I got to Emory, I was already communicating with my mentor/advisor, and also to other people in that department. I'm introducing myself. I'm saying, hey, do you want to have a Zoom meeting? Remember at the time it was during COVID, or when I officially moved back to Atlanta, do you want to meet for coffee in person? That kind of sets the tone to let you know that I'm being forthcoming and letting you know that I'm here and I'm also here to work. But also I'm very direct. I don't like to say things in a tone that can become combative or aggressive, but I'm going to clearly and effectively communicate that I'm not used to a working environment or working condition that impacts my mental health negatively. So I will respond to your email, but also give me some time, especially on the weekends, because that's my personal time. I'm not going to work super late hours. I don't believe in that, because again, it goes back to, you want people that are productive, and you don't want them to burn out within the first 2 months trying to push these solutions, publications, et cetera, and then by month 4 or 5, they're ready to leave or have a negative idea of you.
So we're not going to spend a lot of time in the workshop necessarily going through each one of these questions. And certainly, if you are interested in learning more about your own mental health and kind of how it relates to an actual scale, the Healthy Work Survey is one example of an online tool that you could use. But I think some of these reflection questions can be helpful check-ins in terms of your level of satisfaction, how much time and energy you spend at work, and whether or not this allows you to feel healthy. And again, it's not about kind of counting the clock. I mean, one of the things I liked about the video that Béné showed is that, sometimes 10 hours of work can be the most productive work, and sometimes you can work for 40 hours and get absolutely nothing done. So, figuring out kind of what that looks like for you on a regular basis is important. And thinking through, and the Padlet is one step, but again, how you manage and bounce back from stressful moments, whether it be that manuscript that was not accepted or some other major stressor in your life. How are you either seeking help or enacting control in those situations in order to stay healthy? And so I'm just going to walk through a framework for planning your mentoring conversation. And we do have handouts on the website that you can actually print and take notes on to prepare for the conversation. But the most important thing to start with is just the topic. And I think making sure that that topic is clear and transparent to your mentor prior to the conversation. Being clear about what your goal is. So what do you hope happens? Are you looking for validation or support, or do you actually want some sort of action in the form of a resource or a connection? And then I hope you all have kind of multiple mentors. You may have a primary supervisor or advisor, but it can be really helpful to have a network of people who are supporting you. And so who is best placed to support you for this particular topic is an important thing to address. And then the other thing is, typically for these types of mentoring conversations that are not focused on the day-to-day or, kind of the to-do list, there might be some hesitancies or assumptions or fears, or you're bringing in the baggage of unmet expectations. So what are you coming in with that you might need to mentally address, and what might your mentor be thinking at the same time? So reflecting on kind of past conversations, and if they have been successful, what made them successful? And if they were less successful, or this topic in particular makes you nervous, then what can you do to set it on a good path? And then here you all are in this workshop. So that is part of the how. But are there other ways that you need to prepare? So are you wishing to come with any materials? Do you need to send anything in advance? So this is, for this type of wellness conversation, there might not be any level of preparation, but for other types of conversations, like closing out your research position or planning for the next stage of your career, there may be a number of things that you might want to send in advance.
I'm happy to start a timer that helps. Sure.
I was thinking, Béné, since we only have an hour, that we would actually put them into breakouts, where they can kind of talk through from the perspective of the topic. So we will be a little loosey-goosey on our prompt because we're not going to have you actually write out the reflection. An hour goes by really fast. But the idea is for about 10 minutes, we'll put you inside breakout rooms where you can actually connect with your other colleagues. And at this point in time, you might just be at the goal level. We've chosen a particular conversation for you to have in terms of walking through an example, but that might not be the topic that is most present for you. So in your small groups, you can share, your goals for the conversation, and maybe how you might approach that conversation, or what you've been thinking about in terms of initiating it. So like we'll put you in maybe groups of 2 or 3, so we can do a little think pair share or think trio share for the next 10 minutes or so. Welcome back, everyone. I think here we can kind of use the rest of the 10 minutes to do one of 2 things. One is, to chat about some of the things that came up in your group that you want to elevate, and you can use the chat for that, or you could raise your hand. Or we're happy to take any questions that you have or came up for you in the last 50 minutes or so. So you can use the chat below, or if you raise your hand, Béné and I are more than happy to chat to you live as well. I see the comment in the chat that's really interesting, and one of the things that can happen over time also is I know several mentors at BU have actually used some of these mentoring expectation documents to then create an overall, like, welcome to my lab letter, or an overall guide to as an onboarding tool. So I think you're right. These things start out almost as an instructions manual and can be used that way for future postdocs as well. And I see Jeffrey is new to the mentoring process and wanting to get off to a good start. Well, that's wonderful that you're putting your good intentions to action. So, and one of the things I find too is with each mentee, it kind of changes. I mean, Béné will be going out into the world into a fabulous new position very soon. And we had our offboarding conversation. And for other postdocs who have been more in the middle of their projects, that conversation has been very extensive and long-term. And for us, actually, most of the things are done. So it was very straightforward. So I think you can even follow the same framework and it can go in totally different directions.
Yeah, I really like what you said, Kristen. Especially because I think during my PhD, the best mentor I had was a postdoc in the lab. It was not necessarily my PI. And so it's true that when you think about all the mentors you have around you, everyone counts. And even your auntie who is not even in the lab but provides you with amazing life advice is also a mentor, even if she's not a PI necessarily. Yeah, and also the last comment here about the challenge to not reproduce the model that you've been trained on. It's really great that you have this awareness, right? Most of us mentor as we've been mentored, and it can be really tricky sometimes to think about mentoring in a different way from what we've received. So that's the hope also behind the tools we created. We hope that they can provide a base or a new base maybe for mentors and mentees to think about what they want from mentoring relationships and conversations.
Yeah, and I think acknowledging how the training landscape has changed. I was a postdoc from 2010 to 2013, which is now sadly more than 10 years ago. And the expectations that I had for being a postdoc, I think, are different than some of the expectations that I'm hearing from current postdocs. I think many people are more savvy as they're in graduate school and coming into research roles about what they want in ways that I think my cohort just did not participate in the level of professional development and reflection that is now built in. And so with that, I think comes a greater focus and clarity around purpose. And so, I think all mentors coming into that have to recognize that the kind of defaults that you just sort of used to slide into between these different transitions may not exist for current mentees, and they may have a very specific idea about what they're looking for. Now, there's an interesting question from Kristen in the chat about kind of what happens when you can't provide something that your mentee needs. And I think this is where, boundaries on the part of the mentor are really important. And this is where encouraging a mentoring network. So I would say that if what your mentee needs really has no overlap from the type of expertise or mentoring that you can provide and the style in which you provide it, then that might be a point of reevaluation for both of you in terms of what the relationship looks like. But where there is overlap, but I mean, for example, I have had mentees who've been really interested in career pathways that I am not familiar with. And in every case, I have had to refer them to people either in my network or outside of it who have those careers who can really help them appreciate and understand the next steps. So I think I think that referrals are good. I mean, a primary mentor can be a point of triage, right? And there's a certain amount that person can support and guide. And sometimes there's a lot of overlap, but in many times there might be all sorts of referrals that they need to make to the appropriate person to help. And I think normalizing that from the start of a relationship so that the mentee, whether they be a staff member, a student, or an undergraduate, knows that you can't necessarily be the be all end all on every topic, can then, help ease what could feel like a brush off or a rejection into just a normal process of connecting people. Well, and I think Ikram's comment is Béné's laughing, and she's laughing because I certainly don't have expertise in all areas, and I do consider myself both her mentor and the mentor of many others. So I would, again, challenge this notion that being a mentor for someone requires you to have expertise in absolutely all the things. I think that is, I think that is a very traditional academic model of mentoring. that we basically know doesn't work very well. So I think the idea that a mentor has specific strengths to offer, and doing an inventory of those strengths and the mentee's strengths and creating alignment is a much healthier way to approach it and a much easier way into being a mentor, than kind of expecting that somehow you will know all the things. I don't know all the things. I will never know all the things. So we can close on that, the permission not to know all the things. I think that's very important.
All right, thank you so much. We are unfortunately out of time, so I hope that most of your questions were answered. Thank you to all the participants for joining and interacting with us today. And please give me a huge help in giving a huge thanks to our awesome speakers, Sarah and Béné, for sharing their work and supporting our community. Thank you so much. A bunch of resources have just been added to the chat, so take a second to check those out, copy and paste them into your browser. And when you leave the Zoom today, please complete the short survey to help us improve and tailor these future professional development programs to things that would be very relevant and supportive to you. We'll be announcing the next session soon, and we look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you, and have a great week, everyone.